Another win for your Houston Dynamo. Closer to the top of the Western Conference now. We'll get into what could happen this weekend. But first, we review the 4-3 win over the San Jose Earthquakes here on Inside the Hexagon, a Dynamo podcast brought to you actually by the Striker Texas, thestrikertexas.com. We call it your one-stop shop for everything you want to know around the state. Good content from people like Laura Gomez, who's here with us, myself, Victor Araiza. Laura, big smile on your face. It's a big week.
I mean, I think it's a good week to be a Dynamo fan. I think that it's a good week to cover the Dynamo as well. I think it was interesting, a very good game, solid. We could break it down. I'm not going to give everybody the details right in our introduction. So let's break it down.
Let's break it down. And also, we welcome you if you're watching us for the first time on video. We are trying this new concept here at Striker. You might be watching us on YouTube, on strikertexas.com, or you may be listening to this as you normally do via whatever podcast service you use. So we thank you for joining us on Twitter at Laura Gomez News, at Victor Araiza. You can get us your thoughts on there, and we can always, as we continue to grow this, continue to add more interactive stuff to get your thoughts in about the Houston Dynamo. So 4-3 victory over the San Jose Earthquakes. It didn't come easy. San Jose was going to be a more pressing team. We had talked about it, a more confrontational team. Different from the previous tests they've had at home, like Colorado, Vancouver, and Salt Lake. Teams that were a bit more defensive, that were a bit more on their half of the field. And even comparing them to some of the other opponents they've had, right? I think San Jose is obviously a team that loves to get more possession. They took possession from Houston in this game from the second minute. Right after they were able to get the ball, they won the possession battle at the end of the night. But Houston obviously winning the most important stat, which was goals. 4 of them. Just your overall thoughts first, Laura, on what this win meant and how you saw it go down.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I was looking at the possession percentage before we hit record, and San Jose had 68 and the Dynamo had 32. So that's a big difference of possession. But like you said, when it comes down to it, the Dynamo was the one that came out victorious with the goals. And like we mentioned, if you guys heard our last podcast, we really thought that this was a very winnable game. When we looked at it in paper and compared, the last games of both teams, we saw that it was a very high probability of the Dynamo winning. I mean, they were at home with a team that hadn't had so much luck in the recent games, no victories. And I think that the Dynamo did what they had to do, which was win. I wish they would have kept it, perhaps not letting them score as much, but that's something being more picky, but because at the end of the day, they really took the points home, and that doesn't really matter. And we finally saw Sebastián Ferreira score, which was somebody that we also talked about in the last podcast that we were mentioning, so much money in the player. He has the attitude, he has the looks, but he hadn't done the action. So he came, he conquered, shut us up, not only with 1 goal, but with 2 goals. What did you think of his performance besides the goal scoring part?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we talked about how he's not losing any confidence. He continues to be a player that tries to get a couple chances. The difference is that he just wasn't having any. And actually, if you look at this game and you look at his year, he actually had the same amount of opportunities in this game than he did in previous games at home. The difference was, one a bit more effective. I do think they were trying to get to him a little more. I still don't think they're getting to him enough, but obviously now they finally got him going, right? And let's remember this first goal. It's a great one to get him off the ground, to get him trying to get the
going
second, but it doesn't come off the run of play. It comes off a set piece. It comes off a corner kick in the 8th minute. Ferreira finds some distance, right? It's a prepared play where he goes to the other post and he finds the pass from Lundqvist and just has a little bit of space and puts it in the back of the net. Great way to convert it. Obviously, one that gave the Dynamo the lead, and the 1-0 also gave them a bit more breathing room at home because San Jose was suffocating them, I think, in the first couple of minutes. Houston obviously getting the lead. And again, big for him, who ended up getting a second later on in the night. pivotal moment. We said in this game, this was going to be a good opportunity for him to get on the board. That should be a priority, and now you got him. So 1-0 in the 8th minute. Ferreira getting this team in the lead, but then San Jose again pressing. Yeah, this is where you talk about maybe it's a little worrisome. I think it's a back four that has seen rotation, right? Ethan Bartlow starting his second consecutive match after Tim Parker's injured. Daniel Steres was still training separately, so he was still injured. Parker obviously got a few minutes at the end of the game, but for the most part, it was Jerebe and Bartlow in midfield. The thing I do like with Bartlow is that even if he's a young guy, he has an up arrow to his name. There is going to be a bit of a learning curve, but at least it's that, right? It's not a more seasoned player making maybe mistakes that they shouldn't be making at that point in their career, right? So, but this is where you kind of see a more veteran player, Ebobisi, taking advantage of that, right? Kind of lets Bartlow, kind of run away from him a little bit, gets the space, ties the game in the 25th, then just a magnificent pass from Greygoose in the 28th minute, just 2 minutes later, and now San Jose is up 2-1. So again, Houston, Houston again at home, chasing the game. But it again maybe goes to the attitude of this team. It doesn't matter, in previous years, maybe they would be chasing the game, but maybe there wasn't that confidence to overturn the result. In this case, Houston does. Didn't go quietly into the night, right? After going down 2-1. They get Quintero involved, right? Pasher, by the way, got the start over Corey Baird. So he's very influential in the Dynamo's second goal right before halftime, where Quintero, maybe a little bit more difficult than it looks, but puts it in the back of the net. 2-2 at halftime. What do you think of the first half?
I mean, I think that the first half was very impressive in the sense of really having a lot of action. I think that it was really good. I think that even though San Jose wasn't coming into this game with the best record, in the past games, I feel like they really went in there and tried to really win the game. I think that the second half was very 50-50. I think that we couldn't really predict who was a team that was going to really take the win. I think that came down more to the second half and how each team really handled, the passes, the time and just showed a little bit. I guess I don't even want to say Dynamo really helped them out in the second part. So I think the first part was very even in the sense of not only like the scoreboard, but also like the way that they were trying. Both teams were really trying to really, take the points home. And kind of what you were mentioning off what you were saying about, who was starting, who was this and that, and the back line. I kind of want to get your opinion on Valentin. What do you think is going on? Because we saw him very active, let's say last season with a different coach, and this time he has been kind of not as included, I guess, in a lot of games and not as active.
Yeah, I think he's an older guy, right? A more experienced guy that last year was maybe getting beat a little bit. Not the same effective player, and simply I think the coach just likes Griffin Dorsey a little more. Maybe sees more opportunity for him to try to get up the field and create more opportunities. Dorsey certainly works hard. I will give him that, and maybe the attitude is part of it. I mean, that's not to say that Valentin is unprofessional in any way, because I mean he's been in the league for a while, but maybe Dorsey just has a little bit more of a spark, right? I don't know if that comes with him being a younger guy. Ultimately, Dorsey, I don't think is penetrating as much as he should. I mean, he's not.
Yeah, because that's the thought would be, right? If you're going to change somebody with so much experience, because you also have to have people in the back that have experience, because that's part of what, the defensive line has to do. They have to be, kind of like the stopping point of the rivals. So what you're mentioning about what Dorsey's like, he has to go up there and more kind of help out, push up, but he's not doing that. I don't know.
Yeah,
I
think it's just younger legs. I think that's what helps Dorsey more. Maybe he can just run more throughout the game, and that's what Nagamura likes. but I think his crosses aren't as effective. I think and Valentin is seen like an experienced guy to have off the bench, and he's going to be able to help you in stints during the season when the schedule is more congested. Ultimately, I think, and this is some of the stuff I'll get into some of your questions. Which, by the way, if you have any questions, I do have a post up on Twitter. I will get to them on strikertexas.com. We're calling this the Naranja letters, right? Similar to what Chris Bill's doing with Austin with the Verde letters, and John starting that up in Dallas with the Roja letters. I believe we also have a fan mail email. I'll get that to you guys. But one of those questions was what's the situation, and I think that's part of it, right? I think ultimately Seca's going to be the starter, right? Or at least that's what he was brought in to do, the Brazilian gold medalist. So part of it is just Seca getting in fitness and Seca eventually making the starting lineup and staying there. So I think for now it's just younger legs. Griffin Dorsey maybe can run a couple more during the game, and that's why he's there. But I do think, it's not as effective.
Yeah,
and neither is Luntis
on
the other side for.
I mean, it's interesting to me because I think it's one of the questions that it's not a new one. Like, do you go with experience or do you go with younger legs in that kind of sense? So in some games, I was kind of like, well, he's not the one that should be there. I think that it's more for an experienced player, even if he can't run the whole time, but he can still do some things a little bit more dangerous place perhaps than Dorsey. But we'll see how the season keeps going. I just wanted to throw that out there because it's been something that I was like, okay, let me see how the games start to evolve and really see what players are put out there. But yeah, I do agree with you. We'll see what happens and with what Seco just mentioned and see what's going on and let us know what you guys think. I mean, because obviously we're not the coaches and stuff like that, but we're opinionated and we have opinions on who and why the players aren't there. But yeah, that was just one of my questions. I was like, oh, let's see that what you think.
Yeah. By the way, just a reminder, at Laura Gomez News on Twitter, at Victor Araiza. We also have this email option now, mailbag at thestrikertexas.com. So some of those questions, we'll throw them on here on the podcast as well, just to kind of debate a little bit more. But yeah, I think that's part of it. I think the other side of it is the left wing, right? I think eventually, and this guy's a little bit farther behind on maybe fitness and getting into the team is Thiago, right? The left winger, another Brazilian that they brought in. I think the plan there, just my opinion I think the plan there is for him to eventually play there and Fafa to move to the right where he's been more effective. That's one of the points that I touched on this week. An assist and a goal from Fafa Pico on the right side of the field, right? He had a goal against Miami. He had an assist in this game here in the second half. We're going to talk about it. And then obviously the other goal he had was a penalty. So second half, Houston coming out of the locker room, ready to take hold of this game. Another set piece in the 57th minute is what leads to teenage Hadebe getting hit the first goal of his Dynamo career. And then again, through the right wing, Fafa Pico driving into the area as he would playing from the other side, but he's not as uncomfortable, right? Coming in from the right. He's on his favorite right foot. He gets the service over to Ferreira, who, puts a little bit extra touch on it, gets it that final definition to make it 4-2 at that point. And then San Jose on a corner gets closer in 77th minute from Tommy Thompson. But ultimately a 4-3 win that again, it's a statement win, I think, for Houston. It's there are certain things I think we can point to and say this team is nowhere near their best form, and nobody is going to be, right, week 6, week 7 into the MLS season. But there are certainly some things to nitpick here, but which is good because given where they've been able to position themselves. I mean, we're talking about Houston now coming into Saturday against the Portland Timbers at home. They're able to climb up to first in the West by Saturday night, by the end of Saturday night, right? Depending on a couple of results around the country. But and through the weekend, they could finish first place in the West. And we haven't even seen their best form. We've mentioned, like you said, the right back position. We've mentioned the left wing. I still think they're not getting, well, I don't think, I mean, the stats are there. They're not getting to Ferreira as much as they should.
Yeah.
They're still not finding him. but Ferreira was able to get on the board twice, which is good. I think if you kind of take into consideration.
I think that he listened to our podcast when we kind of, I was like, you need to go look for them. If they're not passing it to you, you need to go a little bit back and look for them. But no, but kidding aside, I do think, like you just mentioned, I think that he still isn't getting those passes that need to be filtered to him. But I feel like with the evolution of the game and as I guess further games start, the more the games go,
they're going to feel more comfortable. That's part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Him and Quintero have a bit more understanding. Him and Pico, which was a combination here, have a bit more understanding. Which maybe some of those chances earlier in the season, I'm remembering one in Kansas City, one in the early home games, whether it be Salt Lake or Vancouver, where he just that you can tell that the unfamiliarity between these players is part of the reason why those few chances that Ferreira had wasn't necessarily able to convert on him. But yeah, I mean, I do think there's still places here where Houston can benefit to get better. I still say if they add an attacking player, this team could be even way more dangerous. But so far, a good start, right? Are you surprised that the results are? Are you surprised that they've gotten these results this fast?
I don't think the word would be surprised, because I don't want to say that the teams that they've played have not been the best in the league so far, because I don't want to discredit teams, right?
Well, it's still I don't think they have. I think some of them. Miami was trash in that game. I mean, they were.
All right.
Colorado was stout. Colorado came in here and they sat back. They
okay, so let's go with that. I just feel like I'm not surprised, because in paper, I feel like the teams that they faced up until now have been very beatable. Like you mentioned, Miami for me was very beatable. Earthquakes, very beatable. So for me, they still haven't faced an opponent that I would say this is the real test as of right now. Even with the upcoming game, I feel it's a very winnable game. Will they win 4-0, 3-0? No. I think they might tie like a 1-1 or win a 2-0, because Portland has been having like an on and off kind of situation. I mean, they're coming from a win against Vancouver 3-2, but with Galaxy, they got beat 3-1, and Orlando City was a 1-1. With Dallas FC was a 4-1. With Austin, they beat Austin 1-0. So even with Portland, that has been known to be a solid team, isn't the best team that they could be and eventually might be at the end of the season. So for me, when I look at this upcoming game, I still think that this one will be a little bit more challenging. I don't know if it's the most challenging up until now, but I would put it like the top, two teams that have been the most challenging when you're looking at it in paper and when you look at the players. And of course, we have to take into consideration if there's like any injuries and, like what players they put and blah, blah, blah. All the rivals are different. But like you mentioned, I feel like the teams that they've gone up against up until now haven't really given them a very difficult time. So more than surprised, I'm kind of like, okay, good job. This is what I expected, because I'm looking at it in paper. So not surprised, but kind of like, okay, this is what you're supposed to be doing anyways, because very beatable teams again.
Yeah, and look, sorry, I was struggling there with the mute button. No, look, I do think part of it is the competition they face. Now, I'll give credit to Houston. I don't think that's not their fault, right? Whoever they have on the schedule.
Oh yeah, I mean it's not to discredit them, but we're being, like you said, Miami is not it right now. So I mean, I don't want to give, and it's not that I don't want to give the kudos that the Dynamo deserves, but I don't feel comfortable saying this is a strong team will go into the playoffs because of the teams that we have faced.
Yeah, and right? Look, and considering the past years, it doesn't matter, right? I mean, you're off to a winning start. You're off to, I think we mentioned it here, and this is something that maybe in past years wasn't capitalized on, is a good early home schedule, right? They have a game at home here, right? They're going to have the derby next week against at FC Dallas, but then they're back home against Austin, right? So, you're talking about in their next 3 games, 2 of them are at home. You got to rack up those home points so that when you go into the summer, which has historically been the time that Houston just goes in a downward spiral,
struggles.
You've got a cushion that you can kind of lean on a little bit, and especially with, you know, again, maybe not the most toughest opponents on the road so far, but you've shown that there is a difference in how they approach things this year. There is a different mentality. I do think we do have to highlight that. This was supposed to be a clean slate, right? With Pat Onstad, the new general manager, and Paulo Nagamura, the new head coach. And it has been. I think the new owner has obviously had people take notice.
Involved.
On and off the field throughout the organization. That's accountability that hadn't been there for the team from within, right? They can tell us this is a happy family, this is all great, this is kumbaya, but you can tell there's a change inside the club, and that's what they've been needing. That's real something change. That was there in the championship teams, because, you know, winning teams, championship teams, they're not all roses, right?
No, I mean, there's always going to be difficulties. I mean, there's no perfect team, right? Because if now we wouldn't have championships, we would just hand over the trophy to the always winner team. So I think that's what's great about you know, soccer, specifically in the MLS. Even so, but yeah, I mean, I agree with you, because before, I don't think there was accountability. I don't think that there was real on the floor involvement of the ownership, and I think that a lot of the things that they came in saying, Siegel, it's actually being followed through.
And I think, again, going to trainings, I think personal pride. I think there were very few players on prior teams that had it. I mean, a lot of times it was like, it's fine, you know.
We're here.
It was a very lackadaisical attitude, yeah. And a lot of these things are starting to change behind the scenes, and that's part of this start, right? So now you have a team against, you know, again, things have fallen in place a little bit for Houston, but the good thing is, you know, they're taking advantage of it, right? They're taking advantage of this early home schedule. They're taking advantage of these opponents. Now you're gradually going into some of these tougher teams, like Portland coming in, the runner-up, right? The team that got to the MLS Cup final last year. I still think a winnable game.
Yes.
But it is going to be a good test, because they do have players that can hurt the Dynamo, right? You have the two Charra brothers. You have a Sebastián Blanco, who at any point that
very
he's on
dangerous
the field,
players, amazing dangerous players.
And obviously, you know, I always point to this because I don't think in MLS we point to it enough. A coach like Savarese, who's proven to be a winner in Major League Soccer. I mean, I think you know, I was listening to some of the comments this week leading up to this game, and I got to chime in. I got to virtually go up to Portland, and I asked Savarese, you know, what's your impression about Houston? Obviously mentioned that they do have more resources now, but he said there are some weaknesses that they're looking to exploit. So we'll see. And I do think that in that case, it is going to be a good test. You have the rivalry with Dallas, like we said, in the rearview mirror a little bit. RGV's coming to town within the week for the Open Cup.
Oh yeah, that's interesting games coming up for sure.
That'll be an opportunity also for younger players. By the way, this game, Houston versus Portland, it's a 5:00 kickoff. It's part of a doubleheader between the two first teams, and then afterwards, Houston Dynamo 2 will face Portland Timbers 2 on the same field. So maybe a little bit of look to the future as well. The MLS Next Pro match right after, and I think for fans that could be a good value for the ticket. You may see two wins and two teams again that I think a lot of this is culture, Laura. Dynamo 2 at the top of NXT Pro for the time being. Houston taking advantage of this early start. And what else do you want to see here against Portland?
I really just want to see grit. I think that, like we mentioned, I feel like, yes, they've had good communication, and it's going to keep growing. But I see good communication, and I just want to see it taken to the next level with a team that will challenge them. I know you mentioned that, you know, this prior game, they were challenged. You know, San Jose did press, and there was pressure. You know, even with their last goal that was in the 77th minute, they were still showing that, hey, we're still pressuring. We might, you know, catch up and blah, blah, blah.
But there's still tight margins, right? I mean, this last game,
exactly.
they lost. I mean, they didn't lose. they won it by
They
one
won.
goal, right?
Exactly.
They could have
Exactly.
ended in the tie. They might have even lost it. In prior years, we talked
Yeah.
about the Colorado game at home. They had to rescue it at the last minute, right, to take
Mm-hmm.
a tie from it. So they're still kind of swinging on very
Changes,
tight margins.
exactly. Yeah, like the back to back, what was it, the 24th and 25th minute? Like, I think that those are errors that you barely, are recovering from one goal and then again another goal back to back, which that you really have to analyze what went wrong so bad so fast. Because teams, your rival teams are also going to look at the video and really see what happened and trying to replicate it, not once but twice, but during the whole game. So I think I want to see a little bit more tighter in that sense, of what happened in that 1 or 2 minute lapse. But really, what I really want to see is kind of like see that connection grow between the players. And again, facing off to somebody as Portland, which we know that has very, very dangerous teams. Although the team isn't as strong right now, we're still in the beginning. But I think it's a great opportunity to really kind of go head to head with a team that we know is strong, will eventually face off again during the future of the season and take the points.
And by the way, in recent memory, it's either been Seattle or Portland in the MLS Cup final, right? So this
Yep,
very well could be a
exactly.
team that's there at the end of the year. At least that's what history has told us. One of the storylines this week that we kind of need to get to as well: Steve Clark facing his old team, who he helped get to the final last year. Zarek Valentin, if he's able to see some playing time, will also be facing his former team. But Clark turning 36 years young this week, obviously against a team that opted not to renew him, came down to Houston, and actually was part of the Portland team that won here, won their first game in Houston just last September. So again, historically, I think winnable game because Portland has struggled at PNC Stadium. Clark has talked about how it's been a hard place to play. And I do think he's been one of the key players, maybe under the radar because we love to look at goals, but he's been a key player. He's been solid in goal, and he's helped keep the Dynamo off of some of these bad results that they could have gone into, right?
Yeah, and to mention Clark too, I don't know if I mentioned this in the last game. I think the last episode, the last game. I'm a professional player now. I like to watch, the MLS games with my dad and just to really hear him because he's the old school MLS is not there yet kind of man. And I'm like, Dad, like your daughter covers MLS. Come on, I need you to get with the program. So we were watching the game, and my dad's like, "You see, that is a goalie. That is a real goalie. This is what they needed." Because my dad, prior goalies in the last few seasons haven't been up to par to my father's view. He played goalie in Columbia semi-pro, so he had only good things to really say about Clark. And I think that he has really helped. Like you mentioned, sometimes people only talk about the goals that were scored, but we need to also highlight the goals that weren't scored due to a lot of things that Clark has done to avoid those goals to go into the net of the Dynamo. So a shout out to him. Happy birthday. You said it was his birthday? Or no, you said he was 36 years old.
Yeah, his birthday.
There you go. Oh, yeah. Well, happy birthday. And now I was going to say, well, happy early birthday.
April 14th. Yeah, that's when it is. Actually, when we're recording this is his birthday. Pete Rose and a few other famous players also enjoying their birthdays today. So we got Portland this weekend. We'll talk about this on the next episode. Now, what are final thoughts?
I think that it's gonna be a good game, a good test. Again, winnable, at least a 1-0 or a 1-1, but very, very winnable.
Oh,
but with difficulties. Yeah, difficulties. We'll see. When it's gonna be a good test. I'm just gonna say I'm gonna go with a 1-1.
All right. Whatever happens, we'll talk about it here next week. We'll talk about a big week that's coming up, right? The Texas Derby. For everything else, hit the subscribe button on your favorite podcast provider. If you're watching us on YouTube, hit the subscribe button there. And for everything else, the strikertexas.com, that's where you can find our coverage. Dynamo, Dynamo 2, Dash, everything around the state of Texas. So until next week, thank you for listening.
All right. Bye.